Exhaust is a waste of money. Head pipe is a waste of money. Graphics, seat cover, all these add-ons, waste of money, at least until you've invested some money in your suspension. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. And today we're tackling the discussion of what should you spend your money on first. And for me, it's not the shiny new exhaust, which mine is definitely not shiny new anymore. It's not all the bolt-on accessories. For me, the first thing we're gonna spend our money on better be the suspension. There's more to your suspension than just keeping you from blowing out your ankles if you overjump a jump. Whether you're riding trails or motocross or dual sport, suspension is what keeps your tires on the ground and you off the ground. So the first thing we need to do is strip this bike down so I get the suspension out. It's a 2024 KTM 350 XCF. I got the suspension done by 405 Mods when it was brand new before I ever rode it. And now with 55 hours on it, I'm gonna take it down to 405 Mods for them to go through it again. It's probably a little bit overdue on that. I know you're supposed to do your suspension fluid a little bit sooner than that because it does break down. But they're gonna put it back on their suspension dyno and run it through the tests before they tear it down. So that way we can see what it was like when it left their shop versus what it's like now. So I'm curious to see what that looks like. I'm excited to take you guys along with me as we kind of explore that together and ask some questions, hopefully clarify some things for me, and hopefully you guys get to benefit from that as well. So what happens when you neglect your suspension? It's not like the Sarah McLachlan song's gonna play and there's gonna be slow motion puppies all over the place that are really sad. When you make it a habit of neglecting your suspension, it'll eventually catch up to you. One, your fluid stuff's gonna be wore out, but also the longer that stuff's in there, it's also gonna wear out some of your hard parts too. When you neglect your suspension, I think it's one of those things that's just not obvious, right? So when you look at your suspension, unless your forks are just leaking all over the place or your rear spring is bouncing like crazy because there's no shock absorber still, those are the things that are gonna be obvious. But whenever it's your fluid that's breaking down or your internal parts that are wearing out, those are the things that aren't quite as obvious. And so it's harder to quantify when those things are wearing out and putting that into perspective of how you're riding. So for me, whenever things are getting wore out, well, that feels like I just can't quite trust the bike as much. Maybe I'm just not getting in the groove like I was. So I think that's what's harder is because it's not just like if you were to bolt on a pipe and you just feel that instant power. When you do suspension, it's just you're looking for a feeling. And when you have the feeling, you have it. And when you don't have it, you don't know where it went. You don't know how to get it. And I think that's a lot of things that we do when we ride is if you have the feeling, you can push the bike. But if you don't have the feeling, you can't push the bike. And then if you do push the bike without the feeling, then you end up on your head. And that's why taking out the variable of having your suspension regularly serviced is key, so that way you're always on a consistent, well-maintained suspension. All right, we've got the suspension taken off of the bike. I'm gonna move this one aside. I actually have another bike I'm taking the suspension off while I'm making a trip down to Norman, so I'll be stripping it as well. What's up? Morning, Tucker. That's how you become a good customer. Also by paying your parts bills, but.
That's true. What's happening?
Morning.
Good morning.
This is sweet.
Heck yeah.
I hadn't been here yet. Suspension dyno.
Some freshly anodized fixtures.
It's the little details.
Right.
Yeah, if we're gonna be on camera, we need to make sure that things are anodized and pretty. Dude, this is like legit. This is 405 Mods 3.0. Is that bad?
That's sponge.
What are you trying to say here, Kyle?
I was not expecting that.
I ride harder than your above average rider is what you're saying.
Yes. You need to reduce your maintenance interval to about 15 minutes.
Oh boy.
That's kind of insane.
I was not expecting that, my friend. That's wild.
That comes back.
Correct.
Not. Oh my gosh. Dude. That is not spreading out fast.
That is wild.
So would you say that 55 hours, a little too long?
Yeah, probably about 30-ish would probably be a more ideal service interval.
Ledge on there.
It's pretty gnarly. Yeah, so we were at 285 newtons initially with the freshest oil without it being broken in, and now we're at 245. This is your mid-valve compression shims and rebound. So we can manipulate this to change your compression, probably soften it up, give you a little more compliance, late moto comfort, and possibly slow it down just a touch.
All right, when they come back out, they're gonna be super suspension. Your origin story here. So, as I said in the opening part of the video, make sure that you spend your money on suspension before you spend your money on exhaust. And I'm doing just that, spending money on suspension. But I don't need this. But I want it. A little faster now. That's gotta be worth a position or two.
Right?
Just how good that looks.
That's pretty sweet.
We got a cold front moving in here up north. Screaming eagle down here. Come in, Val.
Compression damping is going to be a touch softer, and your rebound's going to be a touch slower.
What are some things that you see that like is a quick telltale for like, oh, that person's bike is not set up well?
You can certainly look at the pitch of the bike. That's pretty obvious. You can also look at how the rider is riding the bike. If the bike is kind of pushing him off the back or something, which plays into the pitch. But sometimes watching the rider will show you more about what the bike's doing because the rider's almost trying to overcompensate for it. You know, there could be an imbalance that's small that the rider is actually overcompensating for, which brings you to another point of what are you looking for when you're testing with someone and they're riding. So one thing you could look at is the roost.
Really?
What is their roost doing? Is it consistent? Is it intermittent and choppy? If you have consistent roost, that's
means the tire's making keeping traction.
Yeah, in line and driving, unless like you're skipping out and you're breaking traction and breaking roost and breaking drive ultimately.
Because when I think of suspension, I'm thinking of like corner handling and things like that. I'm not necessarily, my first thought isn't traction, which is really what feeds into the rest of it. It's keeping your tires planted and pushing into the ground so that way you can trust the bike and achieve those deeper lean angles and corner like you should be instead of worrying that it's going to push and slide out. Earlier I mentioned not forking out the money for the bling parts, but these came in with silver ones and I'm leaving with black ones because they look awesome. So
talk them into some bling parts.
Yeah. I mean, you did say that, I mean, they are anodized, so they'll be a little slicker on the inside. So performance, right? I'm definitely gonna be the guy that's gonna feel that performance difference. Probably not, but they're bound for an extra couple seconds off my lap times because of how cool they look. So if they look fast, they've got to be fast. But yeah, I appreciate all the work that you've done with us today. You've been super gracious on wearing a chest cam and answering my stupid questions. I can definitely tell the quality, the craftsmanship is like through the roof. All that's to say, if you guys are thinking about reaching out and getting some suspension work done by 405 Mods, fully back those guys. They do an excellent job. I'm not endorsed by these guys. I shout them out in pretty much every one of my posts. And that's just respect giving respect. I appreciate what they've done. I appreciate what they do. I appreciate the quality and craftsmanship that they deliver. And I can stand behind that. And I believe in their product, and I believe that you should try it out. So let's go get this stuff put back on the bikes. We'll see you back in the shop. We're back in the shop, got the fresh suspension ready to go on the bike. I've gone through and cleaned up all the parts that I took off. Went through, greased up all the swing arm, linkage bearings, all that stuff, ready to go back on the bike. I actually had done that recently, so it was pretty quick to do again because most of the stuff was pretty good shape. So just had to throw a little bit more grease in there, good to go. So I'm excited to see what the bike looks like with all the stuff back on there. Excited for those black tubes, and may have to throw some fresh graphics on this thing, or at least some number plates and shroud graphics. They're not in too bad a shape, but if I've got them, might as well run them, right? So we'll see what it looks like. For the general consumer to say, okay, I want to invest this money in something that I'm probably never really going to see the benefit of, that's hard to wrap your mind around. I totally get it. But it's, like I mentioned earlier, it's hard to prove a negative. You know, it's hard to prove that something wasn't there. And in this case, the something that's not there is those accidents and tip overs that you don't have, the you not laboring in corners and things like that. Like maybe someone else can see that, but it's harder for you to see it, I think.
Absolutely.
It's harder for you to pick up on what you're doing better or not doing that it's directly related to this. It's just, it's almost an enigma. So bike's back together. I thought I was gonna be clever last year and order another set of plastics and another set of shroud graphics and number plates, since that's something I always go through a lot. And I ended up not being very hard on my graphics or plastics last year. So I had a brand new set of plastics and a new set of shroud graphics and number plates. So I figured I'd go ahead and throw those on while I have a nice fresh set of fork tubes going on. So again, waste of money. There you have it, the bike's back together. If you have any questions about anything that we talked about in this video, please leave a comment down below. If I can't answer it, I'll get the guys at 405 Mods to give us an answer. If you haven't already, please subscribe, and we'll see you at the races.